So I matriculated in the year 2000. And then I obviously had like a year off, and then deciding what I wanted to do. And then I, went into psychology and philosophy. And I was doing modeling, and I also used to do other work like promotional events. I do like waitressing jobs. There's a lot of other things I've done along the years. I've worked at restaurants many times. I know all the stories of working at a restaurant.
We left off, you were about to tell us the backstory of how Epstein came to kidnap you.
Yeah, well, it was very weird. I had just started modeling, and my dream was to make a lot of money from modeling, because you hear these stories. It was the time of Kate Moss and Cindy Crawford and all these beautiful supermodels, and I'd already been scouted by a few agencies, so it just seemed like a dream come true. My mum also did modeling actually in the 70s, so it was something I was quite familiar with, but my parents didn't want me to do modeling, of course, and I can understand why now, because it's not exactly the best profession for anyone. I mean, it's a great thing to do on the side. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. So what happened is a friend of mine and I went to a restaurant bar, because what they do is they have free drinks for models. It's a sneaky way to sort of get the girls in and get some rich men coming there and stuff, I suppose. But I mean, it wasn't really like that there, but I don't think I was very young and innocent. But anyway, this girl, Naja Hill, who worked for Fox News later on, she approached me and she said, "Oh, a man's bothering me. Can I please stand with you and your friend? And, please save me." So we were like, of course, like, come speak to us. We wanted to like help her out. And then she started like telling me how she, her friend here was here from America. His name was Giuffre Epstein, and he owned his own island in the Caribbean. She said he was like the king of America, and he was here with Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey. And she said his best friend, Leslie Wexner, owned Victoria's Secret. And they, he could really help me with my modeling career. So she said, would I like to meet him? So obviously I said, oh my gosh, yes. Because, as a young person, it just seemed like a dream come true. It was like, because I'd been like, my mum always taught me about positive intent, and I was always dreaming and hoping, dreaming for the best things to happen. So I was like, oh my God, my dreams are coming true. So, sorry, this always makes me anxious talking about this. Anyway, so then we drove along to the restaurant where they were having dinner. It was about like a 5-10 minute drive from where we were. We were at a place called Usaka on Kloof Street in Cape Town. They were at Beluga, which is a restaurant on Prestwich Street in Greenpoint. So it's about literally like a 10-minute drive from where we were. So we drove along, and, I almost didn't believe that what the woman was saying was true. But, we walked in, and sure enough, there they were. Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, Giuffre Epstein, who I'd never heard of, and they were having dinner with a few government officials. When we walked in, they all, like Spacey and Epstein and Clinton and Tucker, they all stood up. The government officials didn't, but those four all stood up and shook my hand. And they were all busy eating dinner. So I was like, oh my God, like as a young person, like I was just like, whoa, I'd never seen a celebrity in my life. And on top of it, these celebrities were actually stopping eating dinner to stand up and shake my hand. And I was just like, what the hell is going on here? But I was just like starstruck, to be honest. And then when Clinton held onto my hand, he held onto my hand for like at least 1 or 2 minutes. Like he shook my hand, and then he started talking to someone else like this, and he just kept holding my hand and had a conversation with the other person, kept holding my hand for quite a long time, like at least 1 minute, and then looked back at me and said, nice to meet you. And, I've seen one more story like that with that guy, the one who recently was found dead, the one who fell off a balcony. I can't remember his name. He was like one of the Backstreet Boy people, or not the NSYNC or something. The one.
Yeah, I know who you mean. Liam Payne.
Yeah, tragic. But he said Puff Daddy did that to him, held onto his hand for a very long time. It's the only time I've ever heard of that. Because I don't understand why he did that, because I've shaken many people's hands over the years, and no one's ever actually done that, where you have the cheek to hold onto someone's hand, start having a conversation with someone else, and actually hold onto their hand. Like it's quite intimidating, especially as a young person. I just turned 20, my birthday's in July, so I turned 20 in July. I met them in September. So I was barely 19. I was young. You know what's the difference between 19, 20, 18, whatever? We're all still kids regardless anyway. But back then we were really naive. Anyway, so then, after that, the girl Naja Hill contacted me because we left the restaurant after about 10 minutes. And then she said that Epstein wanted to see my modeling portfolio because he thought I had potential with, Victoria's Secret. And then they arranged the casting the next day. And she said, would I like to go to see the president's speech before? Clinton, well, he was he just stopped being president by then. So we went to watch a speech he did at the Western Cape Peninsula, the Technicon, the Western Cape Technicon. And while he was doing the speech, Kevin Spacey was filming everyone in the hall, the students included. And it was like a very basic hall. We were all sitting on like plastic chairs. It wasn't anything fancy or, wasn't at all what you'd expect. Like, it was just like a little podium for Clinton. There wasn't it was nothing like you'd expect for a Clinton speech. But it was weird that Kevin Spacey was filming all the people all around. And then afterwards we went and stood outside and we were standing with them, and then all the students and everyone was circling around, but they were told to stay around, in a circle, because also they closed the whole highway off, but they still kept filming all the people. And I didn't know why, obviously, at the time, still don't really know why. But, they closed off the whole highway for us when we drove there. There were police cars everywhere. And they came off every ramp. Like when you're going down, there were police in front, and then this ramp would be closed, and then they'd come off the ramp. It was like, I've never seen anything like that, not even in a movie. It was. So, I was very, it was just all very daunting and overwhelming, and also for me at the time exciting, because I really believed that these people were going to help with my modeling career.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. It's a word from my sponsor, Shopify. When I started this podcast, there were a lot of things I had to figure out on my own: algorithms, guest booking, marketing. I was a bit naive about what was involved, and as you get deeper into it, it starts to overwhelm your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started, such as my co-host Ron's Pokemon business. Get started with your own design studio of hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/Shaun, SHAUN. Go to shopify.co.uk/Shaun, shopify.co.uk/Shaun. Link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast.
Kevin Spacey was very unfriendly the whole time. It was almost like he didn't want me there. It was very, very, very weird. Maybe he was, I don't know. So they basically staged a modeling casting, and 3 women sat across a long table, and they looked at my modeling book. They said that they were for Karen models. Their names were Sarah Killen, Andrea Mitrovic, and Cindy Lopez. While the modeling casting was going on, Bill Clinton walked through the room. He walked past me, and went into another room. It was like a whole big adjoining suite where him and Epstein were staying, it seemed. And he was like, hi, everyone. He saw the modeling casting taking place, and off he walked. And I smelled it, like I've said before, a very weird smell coming out of that room. When he opened that door, a very weird smell came out. Anyway, so then they told me to go see Epstein with my modeling book. So I went through, and he looked through my book, and he said, right, he thinks I'll be perfect for Victoria's Secret. And then within, they left that day. I left the casting, and then Leslie Graf from Epstein's office started phoning and arranging my visa, my traveling, and everything. And I said, I don't have any money, and they said, you don't need money. We're going to deduct everything, the flights and all of that, from your modeling work. So I thought, okay, I've still got my diary from that year with where I wrote down everything I packed. It was very basic. I was taking I even packed my own towel. I thought I was going to some apartment where I was so naive. I thought if you're going somewhere, you've got to take a towel, So anyway, I arrived there after a 20-hour flight from South Africa. I barely slept on the flight because I was so excited, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to make all my family's dreams come true. I'm going to help my mum and my brothers. And everything's going to get better for us all. And then, a man collected me at the airport in a black car and drove me to the modeling apartments, 301 East 66th Street, the modeling apartments that Epstein owned. And I got into the apartment and I was looking out the window and I was just like, whoa, because, coming to New York from South Africa, it was so different. South Africa is such a different place compared to New York. I was like, wow. I remember exactly looking out of that window and just anyway, then the phone rang because there was a phone in the apartment. It was Sarah Kellen, and she said, pack your things, we're going to the Caribbean. So I obviously assumed it was for a modeling job or something. I mean, I didn't have a bikini packed with me. It was October in New York. New York's cold in October. So I didn't, and why would one need a bikini in New York? Anyway, the car came back to collect me. They drove me to Teterboro Airport. The plane took off. He started touching me in between my legs, and I panicked. I immediately knew that if I didn't do what they wanted, they would kill me. Sarah Kellen and Andrei Metrovich sat there laughing while it happened. Yeah. So I was trapped, and it was a very, very, very frightening time. And you know what? My name was not on that flight log, which is also bizarre because it makes you realize that no flight log is accurate. They left my name off that flight log. So basically, if I'd gone missing, my family would have thought I'd gone missing in New York. They would have had no idea I'd been taken to the island. And that makes you wonder how many other people's names were put on that flight log that went missing.
So where was your mind at by the time you landed?
By the time we landed there, I was a different person. I'd been, it was like something weird snapped inside of me. And I was no longer in control of my life. Because before I always felt in control of my life, But I was no longer in control of my life because I was trapped on an island with some of the world's most powerful people. And I knew that I had no option other than to do what they wanted.
Did they take your passport from you and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, they had my passport. They had everything, and also even on the island, if I wanted to try get away, how was I going to try get away from the island? What, swim through shark-infested waters? Absolutely not. I'm not strong enough a swimmer. And it was just very traumatic. There was no getting away from me. Once you're there, and that's that.
Were there any other models though you could confide in?
When we first arrived, it was just Epstein and Andrei Metrovich and Sarah Kellen. But then the next day, another girl arrived. Because at first he was taking me into the bedroom. I was getting called to the bedroom. And then the next day, another girl came. And then when we were watching a movie, she started giving him and then I got even more frightened. Because, I'd only ever had 2 boyfriends. And I was just like, oh, my God. It was just horrible, 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 horrible. Sorry.
You're okay. Take your time. So it seems that a reoccurring technique he used was he would ask girls to give him a massage, and then that would turn into a criminal offense. Did he use that technique on you?
Yeah, he actually did, because when I was taken for the modeling casting afterwards, they said that his massage therapist had cancelled. And then they said that they would offer me $300 to give him a massage, So I obviously, and then that's what was his chance to ask me a lot of questions about myself. And I wasn't a massage therapist or anything, but, $300 at that time was more than a South African girl would be making in 6 months, So it seemed, so that was a little bit of a red flag, to be honest, when they asked me to give him a massage. But I just thought it seemed like, okay, it's, he's very rich and he can sort of do what he wants with people.
At this point of the story, have you met Maxwell yet?
No. I only met Maxwell on the island. She was there most of the time. Yeah, she was usually there, and I was also taken to her apartment she owned in Paris. At the time, I was actually told that Maxwell was Epstein's girlfriend. And that made it even more frightening because it's like, okay, he was taking me and the other girls to the room. I was like, and it was horrible, the whole thing happening. I was like, does the girlfriend know about this? So it made me feel even like, apart from already being like basically raped and made to feel like, what, it made me feel also like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, is this his girlfriend? And, it was just horrible, horrible, horrible. Anyway, I'm sorry.
So you're right, Juliette. Sorry. It's okay, Juliette. It's okay, Juliette. Take your time. Take your time. So you said, just in summary, then you were just around 20 years old. You get flown to the island, and on that first flight to the island, how long did you remain at the island?
For about 5 days.
You said you spent 5 days at the island on that first trip. And how did that end?
So we were at the island for 5 days, and then they move suddenly. They don't tell you when you're going to move, like on the plane and stuff. Just suddenly you'll be told, pack your bags. So from there we went to Palm Beach, and then that's the other weird thing about Palm Beach. He had like this woman who was like a top model there, well, like a good model, and then even in my bedroom there was like a magazine which had pictures of the model staying in the room next door in my magazine. So it was almost like, I've never actually spoken about this before. It was almost like showing me that, oh, he does arrange modeling careers for people. And he was making her eat cherries and like run on the treadmill all day. Her name was Helena. She actually ended up going out with Vin Diesel years later, because I looked her up. But anyway, so we were taken to Palm Beach, and then sorry, that was a bit of a distracting story, but it's all part of the story.
I'm curious, Juliette, what was it like inside that house
at Palm Beach? It was, the Palm Beach house was a lot more basic than the other homes. The other houses, like the New Mexico, had a lot of like very expensive artifacts. Same with New York, a lot of expensive artifacts, paintings and like weird stuff.
Eyeballs. There was a lot of eyeballs, wasn't there?
I love my doggies. They make me happy. Yeah, eyeballs. I saw the eyeballs and the soldier statue and all of that stuff. And then, but Palm Beach and the island were a lot more basic. Like at Palm Beach, he had an office, 2 office areas where he used to sit with like his feet on the table, but on the phone. I never saw him actually doing proper work, like on a computer or like writing notes. It was always like on the phone, or otherwise he was molesting girls, or he wasn't actually doing proper work. I heard him on the phone also like doing like helicopter deals where he was like 20 million rand for a helicopter pad or something. He had like 3 phones in his car. Like the car that used to drive us around, there was like all these phones in the car. But sorry, I've lost my train of thought now.
So you've gone from the islands to the Florida residence.
Yeah. Okay.
What happens at the Florida residence?
So then in Florida, before I'm sent back to New York, he tells me that he's got my family's name on a list, and he works for the CIA. And he told me that a girl who accused him of rape was sent to prison. He planted drugs in her apartment and had her sent to prison. So I was, petrified. I was already petrified because, as I've told before as well, I already saw him shapeshift into another creature. We didn't go into that now, but, apart from everything else that had happened, being kidnapped and everything, I don't think anyone would really want to stand up against someone who's best friends with Bill Clinton, and he was on the phone to Gates often. We all know he was friends with Gates because one of his assistants told me Gates used to go around there for lunch every week.
Bill Gates' wife said there was a lot going on.
Terrific. But I was actually talking about Bush, not Gates. That's another weird thing. It's Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, they've all the bills. And then you've got Epstein's name on the dollar bill. Epstein looks like the man on the dollar bill. So it's like all the bills, and also Bill Richardson, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Bill Richardson.
Yeah.
It's like all the bills, dollar bills.
So anyway, how long were you at the Florida property for?
So also for about like 5 days. And then, he basically told me that if I say anything, I'm going to be put in prison and stuff. And he's got my family's name on a list. And then I was sent to New York, and he wasn't there then, but they sent me to have my hair made blonde and to have my teeth made white. And they sent me to Frederick Fekkai, and he made my hair all blonde and stuff. And then Frederick Fekkai made my teeth whiter. I've still got, not Frederick Fekkai, the Bright Smile place. They made my teeth white. I've still got the card from when they did it. And then I was sent back, and then they had me back there again 2 weeks later.
Back at Florida?
The next time, I need to look at exactly. Yes, well, they took me to the Caribbean because I was taken there, first of all, in October. I arrived on October 17th, and then they took me back again in December.
And during these various, as they're moving you around various places, did you encounter Jean-Luc Brunel? I
never met that man, no. I didn't meet him.
Did you ever meet any of the other survivors who have been in the news?
Well, Tila Davies was there at the same time as me, and Shantae Davies. The other survivors, no, that's actually a good point. I didn't meet, I've made friends with the other girls over time because we were represented by the same law firm, like Virginia Giuffre, who we're talking about.
Virginia,
and, Sarah Ransom, Annie, and Maria Farmer. I met them all after, but while I was there, I saw about 60 girls coming and going. Also in Europe, I saw many girls coming and going. But no, I haven't really been able to be in touch with any of those girls. And like I always say, I didn't see girls being to other men. We were all being made to go to Epstein's bedroom. But I never witnessed another girl being to another man. And, that's the other frightening thing, how they opened up the case as sex trafficking because of, rest in peace, Virginia. I don't even like to talk about people, but it's just so horrible what's happened. But, Virginia and Sarah Ransom were both apparently made to sleep with. And that's how they managed to open up the cases. But, Sarah Ransom retracted her statement. I don't know what exactly happened there. I really don't know. But they've lied about a lot, basically. Because if, Virginia got the settlement from Prince Andrew, if there were more victims, they would have had similar settlements. But there's been nothing like that.
So you're going from property to property, it sounds like, and to the island. How long has this gone for? Was it approximately 2 years?
For 18 months, they kept taking me back and forth. And over the time, I was taken to all the properties, and people ask why I went back. The thing is, I was so broken by then, I'd really been so badly affected by it. And also I had been threatened. So, I just didn't want to cross him. I knew it was just better to go along, with it. I realized he was obviously one of the most powerful men in the world. And that recently on Fox News, there's something that's been released where Virginia had a dead man's switch, where she said that Epstein is still alive. And I'm pretty sure he's very likely still alive. Because, if they can clone people, with Bill Clinton being his best friend and all, and one of his best friends, Bill Clinton banned human cloning. He banned the federal funds used for human cloning in 1997, just 1 year after Dolly the sheep was cloned. People think that cloning's not possible. Well, guess what? It is. They do it. If it was done, that's nearly 30 years ago that they cloned a sheep. God knows what they can do now. You see these videos online where people even put on a mask where it looks like someone else. It's like,
is the possibility that Epstein is still alive, does that make you a bit scared? Is that one of the reasons you've got the attack dogs?
Definitely. And it's not just about Epstein being alive, it's about the whole corporation being alive. Let's not forget, I've been speaking out against the Clintons. They've got a big body count. I've been speaking out against Kevin Spacey, body count. 3 of the accusers who, there were, I think, about 10 people with accusations against him, or 12. I can't remember the exact figures, but 3 of them were found dead within a year. So suddenly everyone retracted their statements, and I don't blame them for doing that. Also, I don't want to, I have attack dogs for a reason.
I've written a book called Clinton, Bush, and CIA Conspiracies, and there's a whole chapter on the body count. I'll have to send you a copy of that if you read books very
Please
much.
Do. Actually, do you know what? You got me onto that Clinton body count. It made me realize, I was like, oh my God, it made me realize how evil they were. And
absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. And also with Michael Bay being on the island, who made not on the island, I met him in New Mexico, but he made the movie called The Island about clones. And it looks like they're all escaping from New Mexico. And he denies meeting Epstein or ever being at Epstein's properties. Well, guess what? I saw him there. I want to be lie detected on it. I'm not lying, but he's lying. So why is he lying? What's he trying to cover?
They're all trying to pretend they didn't know him. All right, Juliette. So far in your story, you've talked about going to the various properties, and then somehow you got away, but you said you came back like a Stockholm syndrome thing. How did you manage to get away that first time?
Well, what he was trying to do is bring people into his spider web, it seems, because he eventually started offering me $2,000 for any woman I would bring to him, or girl. For any girl I would bring $2,000. He wanted them young and pretty and whatever. And then he also offered me $4,000 a month to stay there, to live there and work with him. And he offered to pay for me to study anything I wanted anywhere in the world. But, I just didn't like being there. It made me very, very unhappy, and I was very terrified of them. So I guess the way I got away was I started putting on weight, because he didn't like it if girls were a bit podgy. So also I developed very bad bulimia, to be honest. I used to go into the kitchen in the night and eat and just throw up because I felt so sick being at a place like that. So I guess I made myself unappealing to him. And then and didn't go ahead with, the offers of money. I didn't, bring people to him or do things like that. So then I guess I became useless to him.
Do you think one of the reasons he set up this pyramid scheme of getting girls to recruit other girls was so that down the road, if any of those girls turned against him and tried to say he'd done things to them, he could just turn around and say, look, she was a recruiter, she's just as bad, and kind of they could use that to destroy the reputation. The lawyers could destroy the reputation in court. Because I've seen that with Virginia. We've seen some of the media here say she was a bad person, she's a recruiter, all this stuff.
No, definitely. And, I don't blame any of those girls who were pulled into that, because, they were also younger than me, a lot of the girls. And also I lived in South Africa, so if a girl's living in Palm Beach nearby and she has a few drinks one night, she might just make a mistake and take her friend there. I don't blame them. I lived here. So, if I'd lived nearby, it's very likely that I could have taken a friend by mistake.
Yeah, and they were kids as well.
How young they are.
These girls, some of them were, teenage kids, underage, and you can't blame them for what these monsters have indoctrinated them into.
Absolutely not. No, you can't. And remember, a lot of they were financially disadvantaged. I've read of stories where some of the girls' mothers needed serious operations. If my mother needed a serious operation, I would have very likely gone ahead with more. You know what I mean? Well, actually, my mum did need an operation, but she was okay. But you know, but I understand with people in like serious situations where they could be led astray by a man like that.
So
And also,
over the 18 months, what was your lowest moment?
all of it. And you know, after that, I was a mess after that. I was put on 3 tranquilizers a day. I couldn't even leave my house. Luckily, my mum was there to look after me, but I could never tell my mum what had actually happened. You know, I only told my mum and others after he died.
Before we get to that, Juliette, what was it like towards the end of that 18 months?
I became a mess. Like, I ended up with such severe panic attacks that I had to be hospitalized 10 times. That's why I was put on tranquilizers. Literally.
And that was while you were still, is that while you were still at one of his properties?
It was after it all. It was after the New Mexico thing that this all happened.
What was the New Mexico thing?
Well, you know, I saw like the UFO there, and then I have the memory waking up in a lab with people around me. You know, also when I used to have these panic attacks, I used to see like almost a spider coming down at me, almost like apparatus. I used to freak out. You know, I don't really know what these people did, and as we all know, we don't know what they're capable of. It's quite clear that they're signing up.
Because there's rumors of all kinds of experiments that happened in New Mexico on a baby farm.
Yeah, well, it is directly between Roswell and Dulce base, isn't it? You know, and we all know that the underground bases. You know, I did see him turn into something. I also saw a UFO there. You know, I very much saw it. There are many people who've seen things like that.
Did Epstein utilize tunnels? Did you ever have any knowledge of that?
I didn't actually see any tunnels to my knowledge, but, you know, I do have the memory of waking up in a lab. And from the research that I've done and what I've looked into, it just seems that there has to be something underneath that island because the accommodation on top was way too basic for a billionaire. A billionaire would have everything very smart and, you know, there was obviously something underneath. Because all there was a few chalets and, you know, a room with like a kitchen and a TV. There must have been something underneath there.
Did you ever become aware of Epstein tape recording people doing things to compromise them?
When I was in New York, what happened the one night is, you know, I'm a smoker, so I wasn't allowed to smoke in the New York mansion. So the one night I opened the window and I climbed out, and then I saw the big, so like imagine a big area like this, okay? I climbed out here, out of the room I was in. It's like 8 stories. Then in the middle down here, there's a big gold dome. So I'm sitting up here looking down. I'm like, you know, anyway. So I smoked my cigarette. And then the next day, the man in charge of the cameras stopped me when I was walking around the mansion, you know, the New York mansion. And he called me to the room and he said, did I open the windows last night? Because he noticed a difference in temperature regulation. And I don't know if I was honest and told him I smoked a cigarette. I didn't want to get in trouble. I think I might have told him no. But he just said to me, he took me in the room and he showed me like 40 screens. And he said, everything here is being monitored. Because I think when I climbed out, they worry that someone's coming in or something from the top. And yeah, he just showed me and just told me, you know, that everything's being watched. So you see, when I opened that window and climbed up with a cigarette, it was triggered. And then he told me that they don't only have that whole system there in New York, he also has it at his house in New Jersey. Because when he's not at work, he's at home watching the cameras. And it was like 40 TVs, like all this size of every inch of the place. But, you know, I never saw every room in that place. And I didn't see camera monitoring at any other property. But I'm sure they did have cameras monitoring there. But the New York one was very much, they had a whole room of it. It was a whole security room. Like the room was about like, you know, 20 by 20 meters big, this security room.
So when Maxwell entered the picture, do you recall any conversations you had with her or what she said to you?
I was always very nervous of her because, you know, she's a very, very intelligent woman and very frightening, very entitled. The only thing I remember is, well, I remember a lot, like, but, you know, she told me how she was snogging Ralph Fiennes at a movie premiere. I really didn't speak to her much. I used to avoid her. But I remember Epstein hated the fact that I smoked cigarettes, and she actually stood up for me and she said when her father died, she used to smoke 3 boxes a day or something. But I mean, I don't know if that's true, that her father even died. But
Yeah, there's an interesting book on that that I read called The Assassination of Robert Maxwell. So, all right, so you're describing now where you're getting to the end of the 18 months and you're a mess. What got you out of there?
I suppose me putting on weight and stuff. I put on weight and started becoming a bit more sort of less obedient to him. And I wasn't bringing him girls and stuff as he wanted. But actually, do you know what else I think happened? Because when I was there, he brought out the article that Maria and Annie Farmer had written, you know, about him. Well, he was being very stressed about that at the time when I was there. He said that there were these girls who were infatuated with him, that were trying to destroy him. And then I think also it became hard for him flying people around after that, because he got caught pretty soon after that. So I don't know if it's maybe to do with that also. But I don't know. Also, he had that girl Nadia Monchenko there at the time. You know, the girl from overseas, who apparently he bought from her parents, which is also very suspicious, you know. I started to wonder, okay, if they're cloning people, maybe she's a clone. Because, you know, she's also a pilot. She's beautiful and she's a pilot and she does all these things. It's like, okay. Much like, you know, that woman Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos, the company that David Boies funded. It's like a perfect business. Like, you know, create a big company, steal a lot of money and just send the clone to prison. You know, if you can make a clone, just blame it all on the clone, chuck the clone in